Hello everyone, Charcoal here, and welcome back to Nostalgia Trip. In contrast to the GeoTracks video, today we're looking at something pretty well known that I've been wanting an excuse to talk about for a long time, by which I mean literal years, Ninjago. In the late 2000s, early 2010s, LEGO was looking for a new story-driven original theme, and Tommy Andreasen, along with others, came up with Ninjago, Masters of Spinjitzu. A pair of pilot episodes were released in January 2011, with the first full season coming later that year in December. And it very recently ended in October 2022 with the final episodes of Season 15 crystallized. Now, Ninjago as a franchise is not over. The original series may have ended, but there is a new series coming in 2023 that we currently know very little about. But for now, I will be focusing only on the original. Now, as I've just made clear, Ninjago is a huge series, and there's no way I can cover all of it in just this video, so I'll be splitting this nostalgia trip into what I see as the four major eras of the show's history. The classic era, which is the pilot plus the first two actual seasons, what I call the post-classic era, which is everything from Season 3 to Season 7, the Oni and Dragon era, which is Seasons 8 through 10, and the Wild Brain era, Seasons 11 through 15. I'll be reviewing each of the 18 major installments in order and ranking them as I go along. Today we're looking at the classic era. Let's dive in. Here we are where it all began. Aspiring blacksmith Kai and his younger sister Nia are looking after their late parents' blacksmith shop, or late as far as we know. Give it a few seasons, you'll see. The skeleton army shows up and kidnaps Nia, and Kai agrees to let Sensei Wu train him to get her back. Get used to Nia being a damsel in distress, it's gonna be a trend for a while. Wu is the son of the first Spinjitzu master, who's basically the Ninjago equivalent of God, and is recruiting Kai to help him find the four weapons of Spinjitzu. And the skeleton army is ruled by Wu's evil brother, the ever-iconic Lord Garmadon. With all that exposition out of the way, it's time for Kai's training, and I love this entire sequence. It's so satisfying when a pompous hothead gets rightly humiliated. Wu's sassy side is also on full display here, and while it's a rare occurrence, it's always a fun time when it does come up. Eventually, Kai meets the other three ninja, and Wu gives them their new suits. Kai is the master of fire, Jay is the master of lightning, Zane is the master of ice, and Cole is the master of earth. This introduction is brief, but very well done, and it tells us everything we need to know about these characters before the action really gets going. They spend the rest of this episode and the beginning of the next one retrieving the golden weapons, during which the ninja all unlock Spinjitzu. Not much to say about this stretch, it's pretty standard. Things pick up again when Kai is lured to the fire temple and claims the sword of fire to save Nia, and Wu sacrifices himself by taking the sword to Garmadon in the underworld. This scene doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The shadow fight thing was genuinely really clever, but why would Sensei announce his plan when Garmadon is right there listening, and he knows he can just tell the skeletons to take the other weapons to a different place? When the skeletons escape back to the underworld with the weapons, the ninja go tame the dragons that were guarding them, even though two of them are wyverns, not dragons, and use them to go after Wu because dragons can travel between realms apparently. Not really a fan of how they did that so quickly off screen, but it makes for a cool looking flight scene. Then we get the Tornado of Creation and Wu's fight with Samukai. The tornado is a pretty fun scene, and the fight was a good way to demonstrate the golden weapon's power, but they don't have much of an emotional punch. Samukai tries to hold all the weapons at once and gets destroyed by their power as a result, which somehow opens a portal for Garmadon to leave the underworld? Why do they do this? Other people die by uniting them later, but they never create a portal again. This is only scratching the surface though. The golden weapons in general and what they're capable of keep making less and less sense as the series goes on. And that's the pilot. It was pretty cool at the time it came out, but I think most of what came after it was much better. These characters are likable and it does a good job of setting up the rest of the series, but the plot here is very basic, and the animation especially is just not that good. There's a general lack of polish all around, but it is just a pilot. Corners were always going to be cut to save money in case it flopped. Overall, it's okay. It's not bad by any means, but it's nothing great either. Still, a solid first entry to the series. Here we go, the first full season, and oh boy, it is an improvement over the pilot in every way possible. The animation is better, the acting is better, the story is better, and we got the ever so iconic theme song that almost everyone recognizes. Where do I even begin? Let's start with our first new character, Lord Garmadon's son, Lloyd Garmadon. At the start of the season, he's just a bratty child after some petty revenge, and it's a pretty novel idea to have the season's conflict be caused by a kid who doesn't really understand what he's unleashing. Come to think of it, quite a few of these seasons can have their causes traced back to Lloyd opening that that first tomb. By the end of this season, though, he's learned his lesson and is on his way to becoming the prophesied Green Ninja, destined to face off against the Dark Lord. Now let's talk about the other ninja. Unlike the pilot, which very clearly focused on Kai, this season doesn't focus on anyone in particular. Each ninja gets a couple episodes each to shine and show us exactly who they are. Zane doesn't feel emotions in the same way the others do, and finds out it's because he's a robot. I can't believe we live in a world where that's a completely normal sentence. He learns to embrace what he is and how it makes him special. Speaking of which, I'm kinda mixed on Zane being a robot. It doesn't make a lot of sense, if any, but it's so absurd it oddly kind of works. As for the others, Jay lacks self-confidence and tries to hide who he is to impress people, but learns that he can only succeed by being himself. Cole struggles with not following in his father's footsteps, but learns to come clean with him and manages to mend their broken relationship. And Kai is very hot-headed and impulsive, develops a bit of an inferiority complex when everyone else unlocks their true potentials before he does, and has convinced himself that he's the Green Ninja. But when he's forced to make a choice between personal glory or saving Lloyd's life, he swallows his pride and finally accepts that he's not meant to be the chosen one, but to protect him. Now that I say it out loud, Kai's arc this season was basically him realizing he's not the main character. Even Nia gets some time to shine as Samurai X, so that's neat. Now for the villains. First of all, Pythor. I love charismatic manipulator villains, and Pythor is no exception. He uses trickery to gain control of the Serpentine, with the other generals acting as his enforcers. He's the brains, they're the brawn. His goal here is to unleash the Great Devourer, and his descent into madness as it finally happens is so fun to watch. In the end, he gets his just dues by being eaten by the beast. Very satisfying. Now, Garmadon. He's not actually a villain in this season, instead fighting on the side of the ninja. This was the season that really humanized him instead of having him be the typical evil lord. He may be hellbent on conquering Ninjago, but there's one thing he loves more than anything, and that's Lloyd. Garmadon dreads the final battle just as much as Lloyd does, but he still wants Lloyd to give it his all. Garmadon wants Lloyd to have the life he never got to have, and that emotional tension between them is one of the best parts of the season. The only real negative I can think of is that this season isn't very ambitious, especially compared to later ones. They don't get very deep into lore here, and the overall plot is kind of basic. This isn't a show with complex backstories, super emotional plots, or a wide array of lovable characters that fans like myself have come to love the series for, at least not yet. I would call Rise of the Snakes good, but not great. The simplicity is refreshing, but like the pilot, I just think a lot of what came later was better. This season is strange. It's divided into two separate arcs. The first 6 episodes make up the Mega Weapon arc, and the last 7 are the Stone Army arc, and my opinions on these couldn't be more different. The Mega Weapon arc is incredibly boring. Each episode follows the same general formula. Garmadon uses the Mega Weapon to create something that the ninja have to defeat, meanwhile Lloyd is in the background gradually learning how to fight properly and harness his powers. Even though Lloyd is supposed to be the protagonist of the season, these episodes focus more on the original ninja, and they're so boring because the ninja don't change or have any sort of arc. It's the same story every week. Another couple things I take issue with are Lloyd getting aged up and the finale of this arc. Lloyd doesn't grow up naturally. Instead, there's some dumb episode about Garmadon resurrecting a dinosaur and turning the ninja into kids in the process, and the potion they use to reverse everything ends up making Lloyd older. This makes his story feel kinda rushed and less natural. And the final episode of the arc, Wrong Place, Wrong Time, is a time travel plot, so of course it was gonna flop, as those plots often do. This episode throws logic completely out the window in how they destroy the Mega Weapon. Jay just finds the golden weapons off screen with no explanation, and when they destroy the Mega Weapon, the other weapons are shot into space. Somehow this reverses everything that changed in the timeline, with the only lasting changes being that almost everyone's memory of the Mega Weapon is gone, and the golden weapons themselves are in space on some random comet now. Remember that, it will be important later. The only real positive to this arc is how it emphasizes that Garmadon doesn't want to hurt Lloyd. His plan is not to destroy Lloyd in the final battle, but to prevent the final battle by destroying the other ninja to stop Lloyd's training. I really like that. Also, this arc introduces Dareth, who would go on to become one of the most prominent and funniest side characters in the whole series. This guy's a riot. The Stone Army arc, on the other hand, is great. We finally meet Lloyd's mother, Misako, and we're introduced to the Overlord, one of the most powerful enemies the ninja have ever faced. Lloyd finally gets his time in the spotlight, and this arc is chock full of epic moments. The Temple of Light, Lloyd's first face-off with the Overlord, the final battle itself, the list goes on. I especially love the subtle twist about the Green Ninja prophecy. Lloyd claims he said he had to face his father, but that's that's not actually true. It said the Green Ninja would be destined to defeat the Dark Lord, not specifically Lord Garmadon. Garmadon's not the Dark Lord, the Overlord is. But they don't say that outright. It's left to the audience to connect those dots themselves, which I love. I will say though, the Overlord is an incredibly generic villain. As soon as Garmadon finally became a complex character, the Overlord swooped right in and took up the mantle of stereotypical evil Dark Lord. Evil for the sake of being evil, living embodiment of darkness, blah blah blah. However, the final battle is easily another one of the series' most iconic moments. I remember sitting down and watching this with my dad when it first aired all those years ago, and I loved it. Seeing Lloyd finally show how strong he's become and the culmination of everything the series has been leading up to until this point was amazing. I can't quite call this season great. The Overlord's lack of complexity and basically the entire Mega Weapon arc really drag it down, but the Stone Army arc as a whole was so good that I'd still call this better than the previous season, and this season would have been even better if that stuff was actually the focus like it should have been. Out of the 3 quote-unquote series finales Ninjago has had, this is definitely the best one. It's going at the top of the list for now, and with that, we've reached the end of Ninjago's classic era. Watching all these episodes as they came out was honestly one of the highlights of that part of my life, and revisiting them to talk about them now really took me back. The classic era had its flaws, but it was still very good, and I'm happy to say it gets better. Now, there's something you gotta understand about LEGO. At the time Ninjago came out, another LEGO franchise you may know, Bionicle, was still pretty fresh off its cancellation after a 10-year run. After Bionicle, LEGO started to play it safe, and most of their original serialized themes from this point on had a shelf life of only 2 or 3 years. See Chima, Nexo Knights, the Bionicle reboot, and so on. Ninjago was never meant to be the exception to that rule. Season 2 was written as a finale because, as far as the creators knew, it was the finale and the show would not be continuing. Heck, the same people who made Ninjago already had Legends of Chima ready to go as its immediate replacement. However, Ninjago proved to be extremely popular, and so in 2014, the series continued into Season 3 rebooted. But that's a story for another day. This has been Wings of Charcoal, and I will see you all in the next video.